For 9 months, Mr. Brooks sought assistance from the appropriate agencies. The City of Fort Collins Neighborhood Services failed to mediate. The Larimer Humane Society was uninterested in a healthy resolution for both Mr. Brooks and the stressed dogs. Fort Collins Police Services mocked Mr. Brooks when he called them for help.
9 or 10 or 11 months into the story, my health was falling apart, and they were loading me up with antibiotics and antivirals and steroids. And the dogs were still barking, and I still couldn't sleep in my own home. So I found a lawyer, and I said, I don't want to sue anybody, but do me a favor and write, lawyers like to call them nasty grams, write a strong letter that says, hey, cut it out. And the neighbors who owned the dogs got a lawyer, and the neighbors' lawyer said, we're not going to do anything, and in fact, if your client doesn't stop harassing my clients, we're going to sue Neil Brooks, which left us with very few options. I asked our lawyer, what should we do? And she said, well, you should file a lawsuit. So we did. And we filed a lawsuit against the dog-owning neighbors and against the Homeowners Association for failing to enforce their own covenants. The long story short is, the Judge Dan Kaup, dismissed our case against the Homeowners Association in a motion for summary judgment. The motion for summary judgment is about the highest bar there is in law. To grant a motion for summary judgment, there must be no material issues of fact and no material issues of law. You simply and utterly don't have a case. But of course we did, and our case was kind of inarguable because there were page after page after page of documents that explained that the Homeowners Association never talked to me, never looked at the situation, never even addressed the situation. They just didn't like me. They sided with their friends and sided against the new guy.
Let me ask you this.
Please.
When you filed the lawsuit, at that time, did you have documents from Humane Society, from the police, that you had tried to remedy the situation through those normal methods?
Absolutely.
And you included that in your lawsuit so that Judge Kaup knew that you had exhausted all of your other remedies.
I think the term they use in law is knew or should have known. I don't believe Judge Kaup ever looked at the case. It's hard for me to imagine that somebody looking at the case could possibly dismiss it in a motion for summary judgment because the evidence, this wasn't a gray area. By the textbook definition of good faith and fiduciary duty, they did everything wrong, and they were silly enough to put it in writing. They called me names, and you're this and you're that, and your second grade teacher doesn't like you, and you're ugly, and your mother dresses you funny, and it's almost impossible to imagine that anybody who looked at the documentation would have dismissed the case before it went to trial.
But for the skeptical people who are watching this, you did have reports from animal control, from the Fort Collins Police Department, that you had tried to take care of the situation before you sued.
Yes.